Welcome, everyone, to a journey that challenges preconceived notions and breaks down barriers. In a world full of sounds, we overlook the rich tapestry of experiences within the deaf community. Today, we embark on a unique exploration, bringing together the hearing and deaf in a conversation that aims to bridge the gap and dismantle the misconceptions surrounding deaf culture. Communication is the heartbeat of human connection, and yet, too often, we find ourselves confined by the limits of what we perceive as normal. But what if we could redefine normal? What if we could shatter stereotypes and embrace the beautiful diversity that exists within the deaf community? In this eye-opening video, we sit down with both hearing and deaf individuals sharing their perspectives on deaf culture. Join us on this enlightening journey as we delve into the vibrant world of deaf culture, dispelling myths and building bridges one conversation at a time.
My name is Callie, and I'm a senior at Boston University, and I'm 22 years old studying speech, language, and hearing sciences.
My name is Sanson. I'm 21 years old.
My name is Oren, and I'm going to be answering some questions.
Hi there, my name is Andrew Bottoms. I'm a faculty member here at Boston University's in the Deaf Studies program. I'm a deaf person, and I grew up in an all-deaf family. My sibling is deaf. I recently became an uncle to a 2-year-old. I have a deaf dog, just kidding, not actually deaf. But I am teaching the Introduction to the Deaf World course here at BU, along with other courses as well.
Hello, I'm Renka. I'm 36 years old, and I've been deaf since birth. I had some residual hearing when I was a newborn, but gradually lost my hearing as I grew up. I've used hearing aids my whole life. I'm from the third generation of an all-deaf family on my dad's side. My mother is deaf, but the rest of her family is hearing. I've attended 7 different schools, 4 of them in a mainstream, or really a solo stream situation, as I was the only deaf student. 3 of the schools I attended were schools for the deaf, and I graduated from one of those, the Washington School for the Deaf. I think I'll leave it at that.
My perspective on the use of hearing implants in deaf culture is that they can be beneficial, but I think it's really up to the individual to decide if they want it or not. And I know it's a very controversial topic, so it's important that you consider the wants of the actual person.
So my thoughts about hearing implants, including cochlear implants and other technology in the deaf community and how they respond to that. Typically, in the past, it was a very sensitive topic for the deaf community. This was an external community really figuring out how to provide something to fix the deaf community as a disabled group. This wasn't something that came from our community. This was something that someone else wanted to, an external person wanted to really figure out how to improve our lives. And deaf people as a whole really talked through that. And for me, my personal views, I think because I was external to the community, it was a controversy there. With cochlear implants, I don't necessarily support or am against them. I think what's important is to make sure that all deaf children, when they're born, have access to American Sign Language, regardless of whether or not the parents agree with that. The children having access to sign language is so important. Research proves that American Sign Language access doesn't have a risk involved, so I think it's reasonable to assume that ASL should be given to deaf children. So that's my thoughts there. So for me, I have no desire to have a cochlear implant. If I were to have children, I wouldn't have a desire to implant them either. So there's no plans there. I think the person is still deaf regardless of whether or not they have an implant. Their deafness doesn't go away. So I really cherish my community and my language, and I'm really proud to be deaf. For the next generation, for deaf kids, I don't see there being a problem with those kids being deaf as well.
Okay, I walk to school every day, and like on the road, I need to hear something. I need to listen to something, and I think music is like part of my life. I need to have that sound like with me on the road, than to deal with the loneliness.
I personally love music. Growing up, I would often sign to songs, and several people in my family would too. I would sign to music at church, at concerts, at gatherings with friends, you name it. I really enjoy music. I like feeling the music in my body and learning the lyrics. I would look up the songs on YouTube and find the music videos that have the lyrics added. Those are great to watch, and I really personally enjoy music.
Yes, I guess you could say from a cultural standpoint, they do have a culture. But I believe that if it could be cured, yes, it should be cured. I believe I would take the stance if they would be happier as a hearing person, because it comes with its challenge. Yes, you have the sense of culture of being deaf, but it does come with its challenges. So I believe it should be cured.
Communication skills that I use to communicate with deaf people. I do not know sign language, but I do know the basics to interact with someone who is deaf. So I know basic signs, and I also just know like proper etiquette. And I think this is really important because it's really easy to learn, and it makes a world of difference when you're interacting with a deaf person.
So how to communicate with hearing people who don't know ASL? I think it's most important to really prioritize, as a rule of thumb, for hearing folks who don't know ASL and meet a deaf person, let the deaf person decide how to communicate in that moment. I think that's most important. Oftentimes hearing people will make assumptions that all deaf people can read lips, and will go ahead and ask the deaf person, and that actually puts them in control of the communication in that moment. Some deaf folks may want to text back and forth, write back and forth. Some deaf folks may use their voice, but making sure that the deaf person decides how to communicate and not having the hearing person control that, I think is important. When there's that mutual decision, communication becomes more natural. An example of how to communicate with a hearing person, how I do, is typically I'll use my phone to text back and forth. Sometimes I'll even use a laptop, or a little bit old school, but sometimes we'll use a pad of paper and pen. We may gesture depending on the hearing person if they have gesturing skills. I think most folks can do basic communication that way, but there are a variety of different ways that you'd communicate with a hearing person who doesn't know sign language.
I love the word choice here. It's like a deaf culture. It's like in a culture, people in the culture have their own language, and even the deaf people, like they have their own way of communication. For hearing people, the only way to enter that deaf culture, to understand that deaf culture, is to learn their language, and then they can know what they are saying and what they're laughing and what's their life.
That last question is an interesting one. Speaking generally, of all of the multitudes of cultures that exist in the world, if something is not your lived experience, can you really 100% fully understand it? No. We can certainly learn about, engage, and interact with people from various cultures, but there will just be certain things that we'll never be able to fully understand about specific cultures if they're not part of their own lived experience, if it's not something that's internalized as part of your growing up. So, can hearing people understand deaf culture? I think they can empathize. They can learn from and interact with deaf people, sure, but they won't fully get deaf culture 100%. At the end of the day, they're still hearing, and their lived experience is still as a hearing person. They're not language deprived. They still have had access to sound in their environment, while deaf culture comes from that experience of having environmental and communication barriers, along with the various oppressions that have come with that. Deaf culture has grown out of that adversity. So, hearing people can't completely understand it, but they still can learn and empathize and interact with deaf culture.
Thank you for being a part of this enlightening journey. Remember, understanding begins with an open heart and mind.